My friends and I were never well-meaning and kind. The sadists were not compassionate scholars trying to do their best for humanity. The burning of fields, the burning of children, were not misguided attempts to do good. Cowards who sit in lecture halls or the halls of state denouncing the crimes of revolutionaries are not as admirable as the farmers and nuns who ran so swiftly into the wind, who ran silently into death. The ones I killed were not the worst people in all those places. In fact, they were the best. Nothing is changing in the life of the poor. There is no change. Gradual change is not happening. It's not going to happen. It was only something we talked about.
Jesus Christ. I'm going to cry.
I
Welcome to Workers
cried
Lit, your favorite
sorry.
podcast about crying and crying and crying. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Oh, I cried performing that just about every night.
Yes.
Just on stage for and I don't cry. I've never been good at crying on stage as an actor, but just like I would say that and just be like, oh no, this isn't the character. That's me. That's what I'm worried about.
What do we know? What does we? How are they in the socialist dream? Everything I can need, oh I need, oh I need, oh I need, oh what does we? Oh what does we? Oh what does we? Oh what do we? Oh.
Welcome back to Workers Lit, your favorite podcast about fighting for the narrative. Jacob and Lenore here. Aisha is unfortunately not here. She is on the floor of a bathroom in some Civil War torn country. But don't worry, the bugs will deliver her back to us next week. But we have someone in the third mic slot. We have Ethan. He is a theater director. He's a podcaster with the People's New Republic podcast. He is here to talk with us about Wallace Shawn's The Fever. Ethan, welcome to Workers Lit.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you.
Yeah,
Happy to have you.
We're hype.
Wallace Shawn is one that I've wanted to talk about for quite a while. This is gonna sound dismissive of like several types of people. I swear it's not. Like I describe Wallace Shawn as like somebody who's who's a great person to introduce socialism to your liberal parents who've seen The Princess Bride, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that sound. Yeah, no, I don't think that's dismissive at all because like we got to introduce socialism to those people, right? Ethan, before we get into it, first of all, this was your recommendation to cover, and second of all, you have work you do. You should plug it right now so that people hear about it because it's worth hearing about.
I mean, the main thing that people listening to this can check out for themselves is I do a podcast with some friends of mine called People's New Republic, where we're reading through the Star Wars expanded universe, like the old stuff before the mouse took over.
Weird stuff.
In chronological order, or in publication order, and we're all Marxists, so we kind of try to think about things historical material with a historical materialist lens. I do a couple of other podcasts that you can find. They're a little much less regular, so you can find those on just if you follow me on Blue Sky, and then if
all
you're
links in bio, by the way, all links in the show notes, of course.
Yeah, and then if you're in Central Colorado, you can come see my plays. There isn't one coming up right now, but eventually there will be. So if you're in Central Colorado, come hit me up.
I have bad news for you. According to the Spotify statistics, all of our listeners are in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida, and Texas. But I actually I saw this. I looked at this recently. I believe we have 3 consistent listeners in Colorado. So for you 3, shout out to y'all.
Well, one of them's me.
The other 2 are focused on the family staffers.
Yeah, they're like. No, they're undercover. We've deployed.
They're undercover.
Them.
Okay.
I have to say, People's New Republic, super fun. I have been on the pod. We talked about
right.
what was it? Ambush at Corellia. I'll was, I think, what we talked about.
Yes.
I will link it in the show notes below. Go listen, go subscribe to People's New Republic. We know y'all like Star Wars. We've gotten emails, talk about more Star Wars. And I literally, every time someone emails me that, I said, we probably will, but did you know there's a podcast about that already?
Uh,
So go check that out. It's cool stuff. Wallace Shawn's The Fever. I would love for you to tell me your background with this play, Ethan.
So one of these other infrequent podcasts I do is called the Sandcastle Business, where I just sort of interview other people who do theater about why they do theater. And I was speaking with someone who used to be the artistic director of like the biggest theater company in my city, and they were, I don't remember specifically what we were talking about, but they brought up some of Wallace Shawn's plays, and specifically The Fever, and I was like, oh, Wallace Shawn, interesting, I didn't know he was a playwright. And I read The Fever, and it just rocked my shit. Like, I just was like at my computer, just sort of like have like head in hand, like this is a lot. And that was probably like 2019. And then a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity, because I run a community theater here in the city I live in, and we did, I don't know, this is gonna be, if someone wanted to find out, they could very easily, the Fever Colorado Springs, they could easily find, I don't know why I'm being so cagey. I run a theater company, and I had the opportunity to stage The Fever, which is just, it's a solo show, and it was, for me, it was a fun challenge that, like, I had never done a solo show, and I really wanted to, and so I got a friend of mine to direct me, and it was just kind of the most, just living in that for like 3 months, 4 months, as we rehearsed it, and I memorized it, was like, just did something, like broke something, in like a good way, I guess. But like he said, like he writes in the play about, like, he's just walking around, just able to see, you could see the fetishism of commodities everywhere, and then just walking around being in, like, feeling sick, just like people talking to him, trying to go through his normal activities, and just like nothing feels right. Like, that's just kind of how I felt for like 6 months. Just internalizing this and constantly just having to think about what is being said here, and I still come back to it a lot, because I think that it is really kind of one of the best summaries of, I mean, it's the best summaries of like commodity fetishism, im- sort of imperial, the experience of living in the imperial core, like benefiting from like the oppression of others, just sort of starting the experience of starting to understand, like, the web of connections that make up all of the, like, physical things in the world, like our consumption. I don't know. It just is just like, it just hits so many things, and it really encapsulates this like feeling of, I don't know. I feel kind of like slightly insane, just like living in the United States most of the time, and
Yeah.
so this play really sums up what that feels like sometimes, I think.
Yeah, and I've been meaning to reach out to get him on the pod. A professor of mine in college, who's a great writer. He wrote The Persimmons. And folks, if you haven't read The Persimmons from Backwater Press, what are you doing? Go read The Persimmons from Backwater Press. He and I right after I graduated, we got coffee a few months after I graduated, and we had this conversation. Mostly it started about Gramsci, and we just ended up talking and talking and talking until this coffee shop closed, right? And he said, and I love this. He said, "This is embarrassing to say because this feels like a childish thing to say." He said these words. He said, "I feel embarrassed saying this. This feels childish, but like, do you ever feel like Neo from the Matrix?" like, this man is brilliant, doctor, multiple doctorates, just brilliant man. But he was like, he's like, I don't know how else to say it. Sometimes you just see the code of things and you go insane. And I think The Fever is one of the best examples of a piece of literature that, like, for a moment you see the code of things. But before we talk about this play in depth, we got to talk about Wallace Shawn. And look, let's get the joke out of the way. Ryan, can you just cut in the inconceivable line and then we could just like have it done?
That would be inconceivable. It's inconceivable. Inconceivable.
Inconceivable. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Inconceivable.
Jokes aside, Princess Bride is my favorite movie of all time. It is my favorite movie of all time. I don't think it's the best movie of all time by a long shot, but it is a movie I saw when I was 6 years old.
Have
I
you read the book out
rewatch
of
it.
curiosity?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we should cover it at some point.
Mhm.
It is my favorite movie. We can talk about it when we cover The Princess Bride itself. I won't get into it. I mean, I love Wallace Shawn's work. I love My Dinner with Andre. I was reading his Reddit AMA from a few years ago the other day, and someone said, "Would you ever do a sequel to My Dinner with Andre?" Which is a crazy question. And he said, "Yeah, every time I have a conversation, this is the sequel right now." And I thought that was really funny. I mean, I've really enjoyed that. It's just embarrassing to say the thing that I saw him on first in my childhood, aside from Princess Bride, he was a regular on the later seasons of The Cosby Show, which I understand now is a little darkened by revelations. But at the time, as a young Christian boy, there were only so many shows I could watch that didn't end with Jesus every single episode. The Cosby Show was one of them. He was remarkable on The Cosby Show as like the shitty neighbor. He's a great actor. He's got a very distinctive voice. Some of the best, like God, like one of the most memorable monologues I think in animated history is like his monologue as the boss in The Incredibles, which feels so childish to say, but like, I'm not happy, Par. I'm not happy is like burned into my brain.
We're supposed to help our people, starting with our stockholders, Bob. Who's helping them out, huh?
He's great. And I learned like 5 years ago that he actually had like written and done so much theater and was actually like had good politics. So yeah, Lenore has the bio on Wallace Shawn. Let's learn about this very cool guy.
Yeah, like I knew he was a certified like good politics haver, right? He's been in everything. He's got over like 200 screen credits. But like going back into his life, like you learn sort of, reading his interviews like up to now, in particular on like Israel Palestine, like he's generally been on the right side of history in a lot of things, evolved from, positions that like weren't entirely like shaken out. But yeah, overall, like the vibe of this guy is like shockingly charming considering his like class position. So he was born on the 12th of November 1943 to a journalist mother and to his father, William Shawn, who edited The New Yorker for 35 years. So he grew up in the Upper East Side. He's pretty much killing it from the start.
Actually, his father, I would note, is actually a very interesting figure that we should actually talk about at some point, not today, but there's actually some really interesting conversation to be had about like that period of the New Yorker. Sorry to interrupt, but if you're interested in that, send us an email because that is something that I've like wanted to talk about for a while, but it's like, does anyone care about the New Yorker in like 1959 except for literally me? Anyway, go ahead, Lenore.
That's interesting. Like, I don't know. I heard Wallace Shawn did an interview recently on TrueAnon.
Yeah.
Did he really?
And he kind of, which was a fascinating conversation, but he kind of talks about at one point his dad in the New Yorker and like when he was young, and it just sort of he just kind of hints at it and then they move on, and I was like, that's not anything I know anything about. I'm curious now. So
there's a whole thing there about like American literature and like the good shit and the bad shit and like ideology and like stuff that if I started talking right now, we would not have time for the rest of the episode. So please continue, Lenore.
This isn't our 4-hour episode?
This isn't our 4-hour episode. I don't think it is. This is like a thing you can read in like an hour, and it shouldn't be our 4-hour episode.
Unless you read it real slow. So he goes
Which we support, by the way. Read what you can when you can.
So he goes to private school in NYC, later the Putney School in Vermont, which is this prestigious like college prep boarding school / dairy farm. Like you go to school and also you work on the farm.
That's so sick.
It's
That's Maoist as hell.
the
I know he's not a Maoist, but that's Maoist as hell.
The rustication of Wallace Shawn. Yeah.
To the people on my Narodnik shit. Yeah.
He mentions a lot of this bio draws heavily from a profile in Harvard Magazine from 2011, which is funny for reasons we'll shortly get into. It's a co-ed school, which he liked. Quoth Wallace Shawn, "I've never been happy in an all-male atmosphere, and I don't really like to be with more than 2 men if no women are present. Things degenerate."
Yeah. Well, never mind. I won't say my y'all can infer how I feel about being with 2 or more men at once, but maybe not in the way he meant.
So, well, as it happens, he goes to somewhere where there is lots more than 2 men. Harvard, pre-integration. I didn't know this. Harvard was all male until like 1999, when like the women's version of Harvard, Radcliffe College, was integrated.
Oh my God.
He describes this as like the worst years of his life. He says the culture at Harvard is anti-intellectual and quite lazy. But he locks in like academically. He goes on exactly 1 date in like all of undergrad. Which, you know, ends up not mattering. He marries his partner, Deborah Eisenberg, in 1972, and they're married to this day. So, you know, his social life didn't really suffer for it. He does go to his 25th college reunion, but he says it's like visiting the Pentagon. There are creepy vibes coming out of there, his words. He was also deeply annoyed that kids, like the teenage kids of his like former classmates, would keep pointing him out and going, "Inconceivable!"
Yeah, like it's got to get irritating at a certain point. Like I said,
he's softened on that.
It's you know, it's irritating. At the same time, it's also like, damn, if it's not iconic, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Suffering from success.
Yeah, at a certain point you embrace that, you know, on some level that is who you're going to be to, you know.
You have to assume like doing The Princess Bride, which was like not a low budget movie, but like a pretty like middling movie for him at the time. Like he didn't expect that to be the thing that everyone identified him with for the rest of his life. Like,
because he's got My Dinner with Andre.
Yeah, he's got a lot of better things, like objectively, but it's just it's a very funny thing to stumble into. We've talked about like other authors and other writers and like actors and stuff who have stumbled into stuff. One of my favorite anecdotes that Wallace Shawn is not nearly as intense as this. Alec Guinness telling someone, "I'll give you my autograph if you never watch Star Wars again."
Yeah.
Anyway, go on, Lenore. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, so he gets a BA in history. He goes to Oxford to study philosophy, politics, economics, which is one interdisciplinary degree. His intent at this time is to go into diplomacy. Can you imagine Wallace Shawn like ambassador to the UN?
No, if not with his current politics, he would have probably not had his current politics, because I don't think he came into like socialism until his 40s.
Well, it's at and it takes him the first sort of arc of his life to get to like writing, acting, even like to Tablet Magazine. He says, "I was 20. John Kennedy was president. I thought he was the ideal president, and we were the ideal country." And then he goes to India to teach English on a Fulbright scholarship. And it's his travels elsewhere that convince him, okay, he would better serve the world as a writer. He would better serve the world telling stories, you know, and offering perspectives that, you know, you wouldn't ordinarily think about, like in the Imperial Corps. So he goes into playwriting. He starts publishing in 1967. His off-Broadway debut comes in 1970 with something called The Hotel Play. It's in that year that he meets French director Andre Gregory, with whom he strikes up this lifelong friendship, lifelong working relationship. Gregory goes on to direct several of Shawn's plays, starting with Our Late Night in 1975, and that's where he starts really getting noticed. He picks up an Obie Award, an Off-Broadway award for that one. This was interesting to me. I want to do a deeper dive into this at some point. A bunch of his early stuff is like surreal sex dramas. In 1977, his play A Thought in Three Parts is running in London, and it gets investigated by a vice squad and dragged in Parliament for like allegations of pornography.
That's so sick.
Yeah, that play. I will say, like, he's not. A lot of his stuff is kind of is I mean, I've only read most of it. It's a little rough to read. Just like there's just like not a lot happening, or like what is happening is just like graphic sex, and then it's just sort of this absurd. A lot of it is just this kind of absurdist commentary about about bourgeois values and
Sure.
relationships and that sort of thing. But it's a little rough. I mean, so one of his plays. Just before this, when you tagged me on Blue Sky to make the joke about it, and I was like, oh well, I don't agree with what I was making a reference. So this is what we call a comedy masterstroke, when only two people are going to get like the entire reference.
Literally me and you.
Some real professional stuff. Like his 1985 play, Aunt Dan and Lemon, is sort of infamous for like the last act, like the last half hour of the play is basically just this one of these main characters kind of just having a long monologue about why the Holocaust was justified. And so it's just like he does, it's just like it's bold. It's like it's out there, and it's not for everybody. Most of it's not for me even.
Worth clarifying here that Wallace Shawn is Jewish.
Yes.
He's Jewish, and like in that same play, like he directly compares Henry Kissinger to Hitler. So like there's a greater context in which he situates this.
He is a man who is not afraid to push boundaries, especially in his earlier career. Yes.
Well, and it gets him some shocking opprobrium. Like New York's critics, like in the 70s to early 80s, are divided on him at this time. Some say he's a genius, some say he sucks. One critic called 1980's Marie and Bruce the kind of play that if either our drama critics or our garbage collectors did their work properly, could not have survived one night.
That's a great criticism, whether it's true or not. I haven't read.
Well, the same review called him one of the unsightliest actors in the city, and the critic was just being a hater because Shawn didn't appear in that play.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so that is some pure hater shit. So.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna put my foot down right now and say something really brave. Not current Wallace Shawn, because he's like 90. Wallace Shawn in Princess Bride is kind of hot. I will not elaborate. He's kind of hot. Go on, Lenore.
So
they're gonna kill you for that one.
No. You don't understand. The listeners have been kink shaming me a lot recently. I said this in our group chat the other day. We have a few types of listeners who write in. Lenore listeners, people who are here for Lenore, are just like, cover hornier things, cover the manga about like MILFs. Gin listeners
Which one?
are like, Gin listeners are like writing really principled like emails that are like very much like very well thought through. They're like recommending on the Patreon we cover like, oh, have you like thought about like talking about like the commons or whatever? And then they're like, not sure about the sex jokes. Aisha listeners are like, cover more fan fiction. And then Jacob listeners are two things. There are people who are like, hi Jacob, I'm gay and I wanna meet you. And then the other type is like, why are there women on this podcast?
Oh no.
And I would like to say that I denounce all of those listeners right now. The guy who said
both groups, or just the second group?
No, the first group. Never mind. But the second group, the first group is fine. The first group is fine. We don't have to meet up. But
listen, if we can radicalize the Gooners, we could stop the world.
Oh yeah. The second group, Gooner, I hardly know her. The second group, the women on this podcast are the only reason that this is any good. I'm fucking insane, and everyone knows that. Everyone's well aware of that fact. Lenore keeps me in check, which is crazy. But it's
I'm
true.
the disciplined one.
You're the disciplined one. That's true. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Shout
Lenore.
out.
This
shout
is
out.
a very shout out who?
Yeah. No, shout out to the Lenore legends. Cheers to the Jacob Jagoffs.
That's true. Someone emailed us and said well, we had a comment too, but we had another one that said that one girl's voice is annoying. And I said, whose in response? And I'm not going to lie. Like, this was a funny way to do the joke. And they said Sheila's. And I was like, okay, that's pretty funny. That's pretty good. They set it up. I thought they were being shitty. They were being funny. Anyway.
Okay, Shawn's film career kicks off in 1979. His first film is Woody Allen's Manhattan. He'd go on to star in 6 Allen pictures, including a real recent one. Neither here nor there.
I think that's worth addressing, but we'll get to it we'll get to it later.
We'll get to it. It's in 1981 now that he stars in My Dinner with Andre. That wins him Best Screenplay from the Boston Society of Film Critics. One of his most famous performances. By some accounts, I couldn't really find anything solid on this, but it's supposed to have gotten him his role in The Princess Bride because the casting director really liked how he said inconceivable.
That's insane. That's insane if that's true.
Worth noting also, that's a role for which Danny DeVito was considered. Imagine that timeline.
I think that Danny DeVito actually would have been pretty good in that role, but not as good as Wallace Shawn. People sleep on Danny DeVito as a serious actor, but he actually act.
He's good as hell, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Wallace Shawn is better at that kind of thing, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's firmly established on TV by this time, of course. He's been on Taxi, Cosby Show. Jen was telling me the other day he went on to play Grand Nagus Zek on Deep Space Nine, the leader of the Ferengi.
Yes. There's a great episode of Cosby Show where he's mad that Bill Cosby lost his drill. And just the way he says drill is like burned into my brain.
I gotta look that up.
It's a good episode.
He's a recurring character, weirdly enough, on Young Sheldon.
Yes.
You also might recognize him as Rex on, if you've seen Toy Story or if you've played Kingdom Hearts 3. Extraordinarily successful career as a character actor. Over 200 screen credits, as I mentioned. 1990, let's get into The Fever.
There we go.
He starts performing this at gatherings and apartments, and it debuts at the Woolly Mammoth Theater Company the following year. The New York Times savages it as a musty, radical chic stunt. But he does win his third Obie for The Fever, his second one for Aunt Dan. The DNA of this play, as I understand it, comes from a period of 3 years where he's traveling in Central America in the 1980s, and it's of a piece with a more overtly political turn that begins around that time. He says it was written at a time when the United States totally dominated El Salvador, indirectly dominated Guatemala and Honduras, so that's what he's thinking about. This is a bit of an extended quote from the Harvard Magazine profile, but this really caught my eye. There's a point where I crossed over from being a regular liberal supporter of the Democratic Party to being a leftist, becoming less in the Arthur Schlesinger Jr. category, Arthur Schlesinger being JFK's court historian, and more in the Noam Chomsky category. Again, long time ago he said this.
This was 1980, yeah.
Yeah. He would later interview Chomsky for his book Essays. That's in like 2010, 2011. It had to do with understanding that I and the people that I knew were actually involved in the story. There are certain writers who specialize in saying, oh my God, the terrible things people do to each other in South America. It's absolutely shocking. At a certain point, I, Shawn, was able to face the fact that, wow, it was the U.S. Army who did that, and A, it was my taxes that paid for them to do it, and B, they did it to preserve the status quo in which I'm leading a very pleasant life. These things are happening every day because of me and my friends, and we're not doing anything about it. You have murder and torture going on, so what does that make us? And that's really the play right there, right? Yep. It's coming to terms with, your comfort in the imperial core, and ultimately, you personally may not have taken actions that resulted in this, but nevertheless, you're perpetuating it simply by virtue of it going unquestioned. He actually performed this play twice a week earlier this year at the Greenwich House Theater. This episode's release will be the day after the show closes.
Yeah. He has said recently in multiple interviews that he feels like this play's time has come again. And I think that's incredibly correct. I think this is also a play whose time, I think it's a play whose time is consistent. I'm going to say now, I maybe should have said it earlier. We are going to link in the show notes where you can read this and listen to this. It will not take you more than 90 minutes to listen to this. I would say at this point, stop the episode, go and listen to a recording of this play. I think You don't have to, but I think you should. It's not that long. You listen to podcasts. If you're listening to this, listen to a 90-minute recording of this play before you come back to this. I think that it will be worth your time and will make your engagement with the rest of this conversation much more fulfilling. It's not a 400-page book. This thing is not that long.
And nor is his 2011 essay "Why I Call Myself a Socialist," which I recommend for anybody who's sort of dipping their toes in, but isn't who isn't really who's on the fence about like really getting into the theory of it. Again, he's really good at framing these things up just in like a very casual conversational form. Politically as well, again, certified good politics haver in most circles. 2014, in response to Israel's invasion of Gaza, he writes an article on the Hollywood Reporter entitled "The Anger of the Palestinians Cannot Be Ended by Killing Their Children." From around that time, he's on the advisory board of Jewish Voice for Peace. He was one of the earliest voices calling for a ceasefire after the 7th of October, 2023. He would later go on to compare Israel to Nazi Germany, calling this phase of the genocide just demonically evil. In many ways, more so.
Yes, he's been increasingly more radical on that issue as Israel has increasingly showed their nature on this issue.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we are, and I think he's got a couple books out, both published by Haymarket Press. These being essays and night thoughts. He himself narrates both of the audiobooks. I've listened to Night Thoughts. That's actually one that I pitched a while back because I want to talk about him for a while. But this one I think is even more concise and just as thematically like relevant, while also being so much more caustic in a way that I really, really think that we need.
I actually, the other day, we had a number of listeners email in because we referenced how to engage with your like lib parents. We talked about that on an episode like 10 days ago. Talk about engaging with your lib parents. If you have lib parents who like to listen to audiobooks, Night Thoughts, like Night Thoughts, like absolutely. That's the one to recommend to them.
So yeah, let's get into The Fever.
The Fever is a one-person show. I say one person. It says at the back, this was designed to be sort of presented in really any venue by someone of any age, any gender, any background. It can be, as it says in the background, presented to just like 12 people in an apartment, very much. So this is a one-person monologue that is very free-flowing, very, kind of stream of consciousness. So everything here is this one person's perspective on their life and their place in the imperial core, I should say. Their place in the center of, just sort of capitalism, not as someone who is running the show in any sense, not as a mega capitalist, not as a super billionaire, not as someone who's at the Pentagon, not as a politician, but as someone who is extremely comfortable, from a family of extremely comfortable people who live in, a major Western city. Imagine it as London, imagine it as New York, imagine it as Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, wherever. But they live in a very comfortable, very rich, liberal life.
And they're in a hotel room in, I don't know, Tegucigalpa, San Salvador, like whatever.
It's a hotel
like,
room in
South
some
City.
country that is in the middle of middle of a bad situation in the third world.
In a poor country where their language isn't spoken.
Yes, actually, yeah, we can kick off from there. Because like he says, that's the very first sentence. I'm traveling. I wake up suddenly in the silence before dawn in a strange hotel room in a poor country where my language isn't spoken, and I'm shaking and shivering. A little later on, a few sentences later, he's like, "There's a small war going on in this poor country where my language isn't spoken." Right, and it's the language thing seems so much more real and immediate to our speaker, I think, than the small war, right? Because he's totally divorced from the context of that war, from the politics animating it, right? this may seem like an extreme comparison, Jacob. You sort of framed it up a little bit. Like, we're starting at the end of the zone of interest, right? We're starting
Yeah.
at the bit where the Auschwitz commandant stops to vomit, right? Where the enormity of the violence he is party to, and in that case perpetrating, right, disturbs even him, right? You can be surrounded by something unfamiliar, right? But the very fact of it being unfamiliar to you in the first place is a symptom of having been able to have been divorced from it.
I think that's true to an extent. I think the speaker's alienation from the violence, though, is very important.
Mhm.
The fact that this person isn't the commandant, right? That
Mhm.
this person is, I think it would be more accurate to be like, this is a party guest in the zone of
Yes.
interest, someone who's
Mhm.
coming to their house for dinner.
Mhm.
Uh, or rather, this is an American, in the 1980s, 1990s. This is an American who is like, I'm a decent liberal. What's happening in Ukraine right now in 1991? What's happening in Guatemala? What's happening in Chile? Like things like that, right? In these countries that have been dismantled by the very system that this person comes from. And they are relatively in this country visiting it, insulated from that violence as
Mhm.
a result of the sort of capital that they personally have. Again, not as a member of like the mega bourgeoisie, not as a like Bezos type, but as a person who is very comfortable. Someone like Wallace Shawn.
Ethan, I'm curious. What's the blocking of this like? Like, you're on the stage for like an hour and a half to 2 hours. What kind of movement are we dealing with here?
Well, so the way that we staged it was we just had we had a bed and we had a nightstand with a lamp, and then we had a toilet and a sink with some water over on this side and no wall. Just it's an imaginary wall. And so it started like the way we did it was started just like laying in bed, and then get up at some point, and it was just kind of, and then go over to the toilet to throw up, and then it was just a lot of kind of standing up in the walking. Just there's not many places to go. There's like you can sit on the bed. There was a
Mhm.
chair you can sit on, and then squatting next to the toilet to throw up, and then at various points I'm just laying on the floor. But it's we did it the way that we did it was staged in a very small space for only like 20 people. So I think it's close to how it probably was originally staged in terms of like just the intimacy of it. Like you're right there. You're in the same room. It's not you're watching someone on a stage like 30, 40 feet away. It's right up there. And so to me, like so what I was able to do when I was doing it was just like get right up to people. Like and just kind of talk directly to people in the audience. At one point near the end, spoilers, where the part where there's just like, okay, I mean, let's face it, let's be honest, the chambermaid is disgusting, right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
she is gross. She wouldn't know what to do with beautiful things. I was there were empty seats, so I was able to sit down next to someone, just kind of like lean over on the armrest and be
Oh,
like,
that's cool.
I mean, let's be honest, right? I mean, it's just you and me here. She is really gross. And so, I mean, yeah, that was how we staged it. And I feel like it was very effective. I'm sure there are plenty of other ways to do it, but to me, getting right up to the people,
Mhm.
to the audience members, to implicate them is really important.
No, yeah, just because that's one of the primary challenges animating this whole thing is how do you keep it, it's one person staging this for an hour and a half, 2 hours. How do you keep it engaging? And yeah, absolutely, thematically and also dramaturgically, yeah, you have to involve the audience. They have to be going through this dark night of the soul with you.
I was reading on Reddit about the recent staging of this play with Wallace Shawn. And apparently, what's been happening is he comes in and he starts talking to the audience very normally about, like, oh, the AC is kind of weird in here. Everybody doing great, whatever. Like, he just starts talking to them as Wallace Shawn, and at a very random point, just launches into the play,
Oh,
Mm.
that's so cool.
which I think is very cool. Now that's for a bigger audience, right? But like this is a play that is very much meant to be like Ethan was saying. You are talking to like some people that are your familiars, that are someone who is someone that is with you, that someone's like, okay, listen, like we get it. It's us, right? Obviously someone outside of that can understand it, but it's very much written for this audience of these people that are, broadly liberal, broadly
Mm-hmm.
progressive, comfortable folks who are here to see a play.
Oh,
I wanted to really emphasize that it's written for people who go to theater.
yes.
And I say
Yes.
this as someone who runs a community theater. The
Oh,
majority
yeah.
of theater audiences are like decently well-off liberals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let me use this moment to share my favorite anecdote that I've shared. One of my favorite anecdotes that I've shared on podcast before. I was given free tickets to the Fox showing of Hamilton in Atlanta. I went. Lenore knows immediately what I'm going to say. Because I've probably told this twice in the podcast already, but like y'all need to hear it. There's a line. I was trying to remember the words. How does a ragtag volunteer army in need of a shower somehow defeat the global superpower? And I was attending the day after the US withdrawal from Afghanistan. And the way the audience responded made the actor like miss a couple beats. It was that bad.
Alexander Taliban.
Had to just throw that out there. Just normal kind of liberal audience that isn't comfortable with these more extreme elements of what their country is involved in. Yeah, and this is a character who is visiting this unnamed war-torn country, this country that we don't know what country it is, but the speaker does not speak the language of it. There's a civil war ongoing. The Civil War is implied to be backed by the country the speaker comes from. We can imply it's the United States of America. I don't think that's particularly hard to divine. I guess if it was performed in like Britain or France, it could also work there. And this person is going through their life as a comfortable, generally liberal, generally decent person with an unnamed job that we don't know what it is, but it's like a bullshit marketing job or like
Got an email job.
tech email job for sure. For sure. An email job that makes a decent amount of money that they would not have if their parents had not also worked decent email jobs with a lot of money. They went to college. Again, these people aren't part of the mega bourgeoisie or anything like that, but they're among the most comfortable people in human history, propped up by a system of mega exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
And this person realizes this, and in this sort of feverish experience in this hotel room that's dirty and there's water bugs crawling around and they're interacting with, they start just sort of speaking from the heart about their life and their moments that they have had over the years, interacting with poorer people and thinking about poorer people and thinking about the violence their country has done, but abstracted from it several layers of abstraction from it, but no doubt benefiting from it.
And the sort of person as well that the speaker is, right? How they move through their life, how they're received by their surroundings, how their friends, their family, the passersby on the street. It's very important to the speaker, at least early on, that they frame it like, "Hey, I'm a good person," right? Right here.
Yes.
Down the street, the woman who worked in the bakery who bent down and gave me sugar-covered buns. And dear God, I never doubted that life was precious. I've always thought life should be celebrated. Right? Right. I thought of the delicacy with which my parents had taught me to urinate into the toilet, to be careful around toilet seats, to wash my hands always with soap, to avoid people with the flu, with colds, to avoid drafts, to avoid rooms that were cold or wet. Right? There's a very specific way that he's taught to move through life and to generally keep his nose clean, right? And what we're confronted with here is, we open the story with sort of an apology, like, "Hey, I'm this person. I've done the right thing. I've been a good person in my life." Because the forthcoming will illustrate that this doesn't fucking matter, right? It doesn't matter of itself, unmoored from practice, from reckoning with all the material forces inimical to the celebration of life that he holds so dear.
So to start with, this speaker, like I said, has a very petty bourgeois life. Their parents are doctors or lawyers or some kind of comfortable job, and talks about, my parents raised me to be a decent person. Of course, we avoided the bad neighborhoods. That's where the tough people hang out. Why are they tough? I don't know.
Because
It's
they like to be.
They like to be tough. They like to be tough, and that's
They don't like the
fine. But
violin there.
yeah, they don't like the violin. This person's constantly coming back to, I like aesthetic things. I like to look inside myself. It says, the book of my life, that is my interior life, is very thick and I've read it, but the exterior life, the life beyond me, well, what I just do is very normal and boring and uninteresting. You know, it's
Well, the thing with the book is that's a it's a thing that comes back multiple times throughout this
right.
play, is that, yeah, it does say near the beginning, like, I know quite a bit about what's inside me. I've been a student of my feelings since I was 9 years old. My feelings, my thoughts, the incredible history of my feelings and my thoughts could fill up a dozen leather-bound books. But the story of my life, my behavior, my actions, that's a slim volume, and I've never read it. I've never wanted to. I've always thought it would be terribly boring. And so, because it's like, this is one of the big ideas for me of the play, is this idea of like what someone looking at you sees, and how that is sort of more how that's sort of more that's more real than, because I feel this way. I feel this way myself. I've got a lot of, I'm always thinking about stuff. I like to read good books. I like music. I consider myself like, I'm not like, I'm a decently I'm a decent person. I'm like a decently kind of well-read and thoughtful person. I went to college. But then, like, if you look at me like from the exterior and you just sort of observe me, you're like, okay, well, this person just like goes to work. This person's cooking. Okay, this person is playing marathon. This person is mowing the grass, and it's just like, and that, but and like, and I'm like, oh well, but there's so much else going on internally, and well, and of course, everyone has all this going on internally, but like the material effects of my life,
Yes.
the actions that I take, the things that I do with my time, that's what is making up that's what makes up my life. And you can summarize that in like a pamphlet, because a lot of it's just the same stuff.
At a certain point, yeah, I recognize his line of thought here, right? I recognize like the line about like, okay, like if you made a book about my life, it'd be like very, very short, very. I've had that exact thought, right? Like at a certain point, like you do, if you're in a certain position in your life, you start to think, okay, so how much can I take stock of how much of my life has been like consumption and subsistence, right? What have I created? What material impact have I had that's going to outlive me?
Yeah. And he has this moment where he says, he's thinking about his parents, and he says, you see, I like Beethoven. I like to hear the bow of the violin cut into the string. I like to follow the phrase of the violin as it goes on and on, like a deep rooted orgasm squeezed out into a rope of sound. I like to go out at night in a cosmopolitan city and sit in a dark auditorium watching dancers fly into each other's arms. Yet, suppose that certain people whose hearts, admittedly, filled with love, are being dragged into a stinking van with a carpet on the floor and stomped by boots till their lips are swollen like oranges, streaming with blood. Yes, I was alive when those things were being done. I lived in the town whose streets ran with the blood of good-hearted victims. I wore the clothes which were pulled from the bodies of the victims when they were raped and killed. But I love the violin. I love the music, the dancers, everything I touch Everything I see, the city with its lights, theaters, coffee shops, newsstands, books, the constant celebration. Life should be celebrated. Life is a gift. This part fucked me up.
Well, especially because with the celebration, in just a few pages later, it gets back to the celebration of like, well, it's shouldn't life be a party? Shouldn't we be celebrating? It's like, well, yeah, of course, but we can't have celebrations in the very same room where groups of people are being tortured or groups of people are being killed. We have to know where are we and where are the ones who are being tortured and killed.
Mhm.
Well, they're not in the same room. Well, no, but and it just keeps going on to this. It's just like, well, wouldn't it feel strange to, we could go to we'll have our celebration of life in the room. It's across the street. It's a building across the street. But like, wouldn't it feel strange to walk by the window during our celebrations and look across at the building we're in now and think about the blood and the deaths and the testicles being crushed inside it?
I thought of it's an interesting analogy. People when they were criticizing the obviously reactionary song, Try That in a Small Town by Jason Aldean. Uh, they were like, why did you film that at the music video at a courthouse where there was a lynching like 80 years ago? And his defense was there are no courthouses in the South where there wasn't a lynching. And
Jesus.
instead of saying, well, maybe we should destroy those motherfuckers, that's the defense. Well, what could I do? I couldn't find anywhere there wasn't a lynching. That's maybe the conservative version of that, right? But it's the thing that I think of. It's like, well, this whole land is desecrated. Well, everywhere is desecrated. And how do we either obfuscate that fact or defend that fact or hide that from ourselves, or else, if you want to be a reactionary, you want to be a conservative, own that fact. That's kind of
Mhm.
the like ways it comes out of, because the more difficult thing to do is to rebel against that, in which case that comfort, the strings of the violin, the plays, the stuff you like, the gifts, the bagel shop that he talks about where he's past the nice pastry from the lady, that doesn't exist for you anymore, or it can't exist in the same way anymore. And
Mhm.
that's where it gets very challenging to your own identity.
How he describes, reading Capital for the first time, maybe to jump ahead a little bit, and like
Yeah,
coming
no,
across the
it's good.
phrase commodity fetishism, right? I wanted to understand that weird sounding phrase, but I could tell that to understand it, your whole life would probably have to change. And I think that's interesting because like there's a shift, right, that he describes when he's reading Capital, when he's reading this socialist text that has been delivered to him, and he's like finding it abstruse at first, but then he starts getting into the flow of it. When he's reading about like the plight of the workers, like specifically, and like there's a certain I don't know, there's a certain shift in consciousness, I think, that like you can have a baseline sympathy for people who don't have like the plot of lands that you have, to use an analogy from later on in the text. But there is something that fundamentally has to change in you that permanently alters your perception of where you're from. And you may have access to that, you may not. There's as well. Our protagonist, early on, he goes to this revolutionary country. Our first thought, he doesn't have to be a specific one, right? My first thought was Cuba. I suppose you could also say like Nicaragua, right?
It was historic. I mean, it was Nicaragua for him.
Mhm.
In this interview on True and On, actually, he talks about
Okay.
he was just sort of a lib who didn't really think about politics very much, and his wife was much more radical than he was,
Oh
and
yeah.
was paying attention to stuff like happening in Nicaragua, and they went to Nicaragua, and that was sort of his exposure. So I also thought of Cuba when I was first reading this, but it was also like historically it was Nicaragua.
Hmm.
It's interesting because he references ice cream, which makes me think of Cuba, because famously Fidel Castro was like, we're gonna have the best ice cream in the world. That was like a fixation of his, uh, which I've always found to be amusing. One of my favorite stories about Fidel Castro is the French ambassador, where Fidel was like, check out our cheese, we've got really good dairy products here. The French ambassador tasted it and he said, this is pretty good cheese, and Fidel was super offended. And then other people were like, Fidel, the French saying someone else has pretty good cheese is actually as good of a compliment as they can conceivably give about something they're a competitor in. And I've always found that to be amusing. But yeah, please continue, Lenore. I did think of Cuba when the dairy products themselves were discussed, because there's a historical context for that.
No, I did too. I did too. You know, it was my first thought because like it's relatively, it's 90 miles from the shore. The
Sure.
person that he talks to in the text is like, yeah, I'm a diplomat from like this revolutionary country. You could find yourself there in a matter of hours if you were so inclined. Obviously, Cuba a little more complicated than that. But it's in the context of like when he's writing this, it premieres in like in 1990. He's writing this in like the late 80s. What's going on, right? The the slowdown and eventual like illegal dissolution of the Soviet Union, right? He's at a point where like the great geopolitical conflict seems to be wrapping up, and socialism seems to have lost. And yet, despite the impending resolution of this world historical like contradiction and this rivalry, like all around him, he's seeing people still like talking like socialists, right? And he's like, okay, what's up what's up with this? Why do I see this person with a Chase shirt, right? Oh, this person who I'm sharing a taxi with, who happens to be a diplomat from this country where there has been a revolution. Why am I hearing all around me, when I go to the nude beach, like somebody yapping about the ruling class and how they're going to get theirs, right? Hasn't this already been defeated, right? And it's
solidarity with that like person in the like local kink community who is like, y'all like being bound, but not by the ruling class.
Oh boy.
I think when you have politics reduced to like global geopolitical rivalry is like a huge thing. It feels weird to say, oh, reduced to this, but like it's easy if you're detached from like the day to day of like building socialism or being involved like politically in this or that country, right? It's easy to sort of have it reduced to like, okay, there is a small political class of people that is engaged in the running of things, right? And that's above and beyond me. But the act of like mass education and of organizing and of political consciousness, like this is happening around you, like whether you're aware of it or not, right? And I think that's what he's really coming to terms with here. Not just in the sense of like, I think the sickness animating this whole thing is more to do with his own sort of reckoning with his class position, but like the sort of inciting incident here is recognizing, oh, like this is history is not something that I am separate from. I don't know. What do y'all think about where we end up like around capital time?
Well, he visits a number of countries, including this
Mhm.
revolutionary country where he has he's like, oh, there's poor stuff and there's a lot of soldiers, but they strike me in a different way than soldiers in other countries, and I'm liking the ice cream here, and I'm engaging with people, and I see these poor people who have power, and it's not great here. That's the thing. He's like, well, it's not great, They're not playing a lot of violin here, but there are poor people with some level of agency, and he travels to other poor countries, and he's basically experiencing in both revolutionary and non-revolutionary countries this underclass, whether or not they have political power, that to him are dirty and uneducated, and of course they have less than him, and he doesn't know how to relate to them. He thinks about, well, what would it be like to have a poor friend? Well, that would be kind of uncomfortable, and it wouldn't be their fault. It would be my fault. I'd be uncomfortable going to that part of town. In his like imagination, he's like, they'd
Yeah.
probably be nice to me.
Yeah, he has this long extended thing about like, oh, you go over to your poor friend's house and it's gross and the meat is like weird and there's a baby crying and it smells funny and you're just like kind of weirdly grossed out the whole time, and then you leave and then you have to go back one other time just to not be rude, and then yeah, and it is articulated and it's very like this, I don't know, just it's very evocative, just sort of the feelings of disgust and discomfort that he has for his imaginary poor friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's right before, well, first I'll get this out of the way. This is neither here nor there. This is right after he meets this guerrilla fighter, who is, maybe not like entirely like versed in Marxist theory, but who recognizes like, hey, like these people who are subscribed to this theory, seem to have the right idea. They are following a philosopher who, like, I know, like
Well,
through
can
his.
we actually really quickly,
Mhm.
can we just like quote this part? Because I think
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's worth quoting.
But one bright sunny Sunday, I went to a tiny church crowded with gaunt faces, and there was joyful singing, and the priest spoke of a loving Christ, the importance of forgiveness, tolerance, mercy. And one afternoon in a dark cafe, I drank a cup of tea with an armed guerrilla, Juana, a follower of Marx. It was a little bit scary. Her skin was yellowish, her eyes too bright. She seemed to be on fire with a painful illness. Well, not really a follower of Marx, but his name seemed wonderful to her. Even his picture seemed beautiful because, unlike the other philosophers and educated people, she explained to me, Marx had made the strange gesture of throwing his life at the feet of the poor. In other words, Marx was a follower of theirs. He was on their side. I kept trying to get her to talk about herself. She hadn't seen her home for a long time. She loved her parents. She had 2 small children. Her husband had died in his early 20s. She spoke to me feverishly about a sister who'd been killed, clenching and unclenching her hands. Her sister's head had been mutilated. After her sister's death, she left her village and walked into the mountains to find the rebels. She learned how to go without eating for days. The poise, the dignity of a wild animal. And it's from this point on that, like, he's trying to go through the motions. When he goes back home, he visits his friends, he goes to a play, and suddenly, like, animating everything he does is this self-consciousness that, like, we were just discussing, right? This is right before a moment where he's racked by another really serious bout of vomiting, right? And it's him sort of expelling this these assumptions that he's grown up and lived his whole life with, right? Because now he starts asking, okay, so why are these people over there sick and dying? Why don't they have money? Don't they ever work? Right? This is where you meet somebody who has struggled as you have not, and that sticks with you.
He's engaging with these people from this underclass. He's realizing that they have, a modicum of intelligence to his mind. He's like, oh, these people aren't literal robots who just smile and hand me donuts or coffee or clean my room. This woman has had life experiences, and she has also read Marx and sees Marx as a follower of hers, which I loved that. I thought that was lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And he is having these engagements where he's like, okay, so there is this global underclass. They do have this ideology when they can be cohered towards their rebellions. And the crackdown on them is always vicious to keep them from power. He talks about, earlier in the book, and I even quoted a little bit of it, the violence that is dealt out against the rebels, the knives used on people's bodies. He has a point where his friend back in wherever city he lives, I'm imagining New York City because
Yeah.
that's, where Wallace Shawn was, saying, oh man, my dad died, and describing the process. And his dad died, and it's of course sad, but his dad also died in as much comfort as any, human has ever died in, relative, with every drug and every painkiller and everything given to him. And he says, well, there was people who were dying, in El Salvador or in Honduras or in Guatemala or in Nicaragua or wherever, that have these insurgencies, Colombia, where people are dying in as much pain as they conceivably can under the hands of experts. And his friend is like, what the fuck, man? Like, I just told you my dad died, right? And like, admittedly, yeah, that is a faux pas. Don't, folks, pro tip, don't
Yeah.
do that when someone
Just
tells
say-
you their dad dies.
His remarks were out of place. Yeah, he says, my
Mhm.
remarks were out of place. Where was the sympathy I owed my friend? His loss was real. And
Yes. And that's an acknowledgement, but he has this moment of like, there are people dying under knives,
Mhm.
there are people, he just read Jakarta Method for the first time. And
Yes.
it is
And it's
just
a
like
human-
glitching out over that.
And it's a human, that's a good way of putting it. It's a human thing of like, you're confronted suddenly with the enormity of the, brutality undergirding everything that you experience and why you experience it, right? And you haven't quite grasped, you maybe understand it in some half-formed way, but you haven't quite grasped how to communicate it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, if someone's like, yeah, your friend comes to you, man, yeah, I'm going through a rough time. My dad just died, and you're like, well, hey, other people are going through like horrific things in other places. You're just like, okay, great. I don't need to ever talk to you again because
Right.
you're a fucking asshole. So
I have to acknowledge, having just been reading the letters of Karl Marx, he did talk that way. He was like, interesting, you're broke. I just saw a guy without a coat. Also, I'm writing.
also,
Also,
I'm
Engels.
broke. Engels, please give me some money.
Yeah. Also, Engels, please, I'm begging you. We're not recommending. I was talking with Brett O'Shea the other day from Rev Left Radio, and he said Marxists shouldn't encourage people to act like Karl Marx day to day. I thought that was very amusing. But that's him like dealing with this, and I think anyone who has gone through the process of radicalization at any point in their life probably had this moment, right? Had this moment of like not knowing how to talk to people. Ethan, I see you
Oh,
you reacted.
yeah,
to that.
no, exactly. Like I think it is a very sort of early radicalization thing, which like I recognize myself. I've seen it in other friends where it's just like once you do see the code of the matrix, like or whatever, then you're just like, well, how come this isn't all we're talking about every single day at all
Right.
times? And then it's just like, and that can be sort of alienating, and that can make you difficult to talk to because you still have to like live in the world and like exist. And so it's just interesting, like finding that early fervor of just like this. No, we have to. I don't. Your dad. Okay, cool. Like unlimited white genocide doesn't matter. But like.
He says
Another
Wallace
kick
Shawn
and
puts
cracker
a
down.
hand on his shoulder. Yeah, literally puts a hand on his shoulder. God, I wish I could do a Wallace Shawn impression and say cracker down, but I can't. But like, imagine it, folks. Imagine it. Wallace, I know you're listening to this. Send us in that audio clip. And please.
Right, but so like, yeah, like that's we've all been there, right? We've all told our friends about that. Like, yeah, I'm glad your dad died because
yeah,
that honky is yeah, exactly. Like, we've all been there, but I think it makes you more effective as you're more effective at sharing these ideas when you're not leading with that. I have found personally.
Sure. And you also have to exist as a human being in the world,
Right,
as sort of a
exactly.
social species, right? And I think what happens next is this character, the speaker, doesn't go and find like a Marxist community to engage with or listens to Workers Lit podcast or something like that. This speaker continues to just sort of cook in his own brain, his own thoughts. And like, yeah, every now and then he'll talk to like a lady at like a cafe who happens to be like Celia Sanchez. She's just there. But like by and large, he is cooking in his own brain, and eventually comes to this place where he has this sort of hallucination of like what would happen if there was like a revolution here, and like and I get dragged into the prisons because I'm a whatever I am, and I yell at the guards, is this the power of the people that I'm in jail? And they throw a book at me, and what is it? It's that book of my life, of who I am. And what is interesting about it, not how I lived, it's the prologue. It's about how I got here. And it's about these plots of land we were all apportioned. And he says, before he was born, there was extreme violence done to apportion plots of land. And that's sort of, a theoretical plot of land. That could be money, that could be a business, that could be resources, or it could be literal land in a lot of places. Right. And then says, we all got our land. And then those people said, well, we want to take care of our kids. And then we said, okay, everybody, violence over. Sorry about everything that came before. That was shitty. We'll do a land acknowledgement. But now this is where everything has fallen. If you use violence, you're violating the rule of law. And yes, We acknowledge that most of you are poor. We're going to work on that. But if you try to take this land back, you're actually a violent, vicious, uneducated person.
No, I love this part. I love how he goes into how inequality has to be rationalized, right? The limits of dissent and protest and morality policed by those who violated them in the first place, right? And once you've naturalized, okay, I have this thing that I have this amount of resources that I think I need to live, right? I have the amount of resources that it is appropriate for me to live on, right? Then it's like, okay, it's that much easier to be like, okay, the person cleaning your hotel room who has to do this for like 16 hours a day to scrape by. Yeah, that's something appropriate for her to have, right? It's how you move stepwise to becoming a cog in this, right? There is and of course, the logical extreme of course is, I mean, we just talked about this the other day on the news half of the show, right? We were talking to Adam Johnson, his book, like How to Sell a Genocide, right? All the moats of rationalization that you have to cross, or you have to put yourself behind in order to be like, okay, like, there is this disproportionate and illegal and genocidal state that we're funding, but that's just how it has to be, that's how, and this is how it's how you get from justifying things to yourself to justifying the world that you live in. This bit right here, I really like. Teach the poor that they must never try to seize power for themselves, because the rule of the poor will always be incompetent, and it will always be cruel. The poor are bloodthirsty, uneducated. They don't have the skills. For their own sake, it must never happen. And they must understand that the dreamers, the idealists, the ones who say that they love the poor, will all become vicious killers in the end. And the ones who claim they can create something better will always end up by creating something worse. The poor must understand these essential lessons, chapters from history, and if they don't understand them, they must all be taken out and shot. Inattention or lack of comprehension cannot be allowed. And in places where we find that the classroom is avoided, we must warn the poor that even the innocent are going to get hurt. We can't accept violence against the symbols of law, the soldiers, the police. We have to kill the ones who commit those crimes. But if the violence goes on for a long time, then the ones whose older sisters and brothers we've already killed may be so full of rage that they don't fear death. And to control those people, we had to go farther, cut out their tongues, cut up their faces, force them to watch us torture their parents, watch the soldiers rape their children. It's the only way to control people who don't fear death. And so we'll teach the poor that yes, we're going to give them things, but we will decide how much we'll give and when, because we're not going to give them everything.
And this can apply to any number of countries, situations, places. But good God, in 2026, like thinking about Gaza, right?
Those who don't fear death. Yeah, right. Like
those who don't fear death, because we've killed their brothers, we've killed their sisters. So what can we do to make them fear us? We have to torture them. We have to make their country unlivable. We have to make their families die. I think of the way Israeli drone strikes are designed to kill your family members. Sometimes, I think of the way that, like, Sinwar, before he died, because they couldn't get him first, they were like targeting his grandchildren. You know what I mean? I think of God, like, I think of what they're doing in Cuba right now. I think of the way they're starving out gasoline, and Cuba, a country that has developed amazing vaccines, not able to get needles because we're blocking needles from coming into the country, the metal to form that. It's like, how can we abuse these people? How can we break these people? And the answers vary. Sometimes you can. Sometimes populations can be broken. It's happened. And sometimes you can't. And then the population that can't be broken is seen as so terrifying and so vicious, because from the perspective of this aesthete person who likes the opera, who likes the violin, right? Who likes to eat the pastries and live in a clean room cleaned by a maid that he doesn't want to think about. The idea of these people carrying guns and fighting and screaming and doing vicious things terrifies him. And we all have to ask ourselves, everyone listening to this, maybe not everyone listening to this, but most of y'all listening to this have to ask ourselves, like, who are we in that scenario? Who are we in that equation? And where does our brain fall,
I think that's really important. That was when I was staging this. That was one of the things that I wanted to emphasize because, like, I think it's really. I think it would be a mistake to be like, okay, well, I'm not. I don't own a business. I'm not part of the bourgeoisie or whatever. So, like, this isn't about me. Um,
Yeah.
and I was like, and I I work for a wage. I rent. I don't own a house. Like, I'm I'm part of the working class of the United States, but even the baseline for, I mean, but I do have a place. I do have a place to live. I do have, so like I am privileged among Americans, but then even as just like a working class American, I am privileged among the peoples of the world,
Right.
and that so that was really important for me in doing this show, was making sure people. It's like, no, you're an American coming to see this. This is about you in some way. It's about you. Something in here is for you. So
No, we discussed this with Carlo Diego Rodriguez when we talked about United States of Banana. We said, like, hey, interesting, you can buy a banana for really cheap, right? Right. Interesting that, like, clothes at Walmart, you know, it might be more expensive recently because Donald Trump is a stupid motherfucker who doesn't know how to manage the capitalist system, but they're relatively cheap. You can buy them for most people in this country, not everyone. There are homeless people. There are people that are really down and out. But by and large, if you're listening to a podcast, you probably can go and buy a shirt at Walmart right now. You're not a bad person for that. I'm not criticizing you. I can too. But where does that put us in the capitalist system? What responsibility does that put upon us? And I am not here to tell you what answer there is to that question. We'll talk about it a little bit more. I don't know, I'm not trying to do some religious level of like, here's your percentage of moral responsibility. That's not doable. That's not possible. But it's worth thinking about, right? It's worth engaging with. It's worth realizing from time to time that the coffee you drink at Starbucks or Dunkin' or whatever, where that comes from, it's worth engaging with that. And it's worth doing more than doing an acknowledgement of it. It's worth doing more than just saying, wow, shout out to those farmers. You know what I mean? They don't hear your shout out. And if they did, it wouldn't do anything for them. And listen, I, Jacob Dallas, have not overthrown the capitalist system. So I am not here to lecture anyone, nor is Wallace Shawn, I think, here to lecture anyone, nor are either of us. But good God, do we have to think about this shit, right? And for those of you who this doesn't apply to, and there's like 10 of you, shout out to y'all. Sorry that we're talking to everybody else. I know I have to shout out Ahmed, um, a listener in Gaza who wrote to us a few weeks ago, who said that he gets sad when he doesn't have Wi-Fi or internet because he can't listen to Workers Lit. Um, Shout out to you, man. You, you're off the hook. The rest of you, though, the rest of you, though, lock in. You know,
yeah, I think that because then it brings us to the end of the play. The play has been sort of going back, or the like the last half of the play is a lot of like I'm like these things I'm feeling and going back like, well, no, these are justifications. These are the, like, I'm a decent person. A decent person isn't someone who has what they're not supposed to have, and I'm a decent person, so what I have is appropriate for me to have, and that means
right?
what other people don't have, that's the appropriate amount of things for them to not have. But then we do get to the part at the end, where it's just like, just yeah, it's just let it happen. Just let it happen, just for this moment, for tonight, and then we'll go back to lying as if it never happened. We'll pretend it never happened. So it's just go ahead and say it, and that's when it's just like, just this litany of things, like finally not lying, finally not like dressing things up, just saying, the life I live is irredeemably corrupt, and it just has no justification. And then that section I read at the beginning. My friends and I, yeah, we weren't well-meaning kind. We suck. Like, if just objectively, we just accept all, we know all of this on some level, and we just accept all of it, and we're comfortable that way. And yeah, and it's just I think that part of the tragedy of the play is that he's saying, like, I'm going to go back to tomorrow. I'm going to feel better. I've sweat through this fever. I'm going to go back to my country. I'm going to go back to my life. Like, this isn't going to, I'm going to go back to lying to myself tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen to this episode back to back with our capitalist realism episode if you want to have a really good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like it's you hit upon something, Ethan. That's very important. I think is, he's had this realization and then he can go back from it, right? And it's in isolation. If this play ends like right where it ends, right, and he goes back to his country from the revolutionary country or whatever, right? This realization of his, right, this consciousness of himself as like a synecdoche for like inequality writ large, right, matters exactly as much as his assertion that he likes the violin and he's a generally good person and he, loves his family and whatnot. Like, it's something that's taking place entirely within his own head. The realization that like he's being treated as though he's responsible for this thing by the Revolutionary Army, which is a hallucination that he goes through. Right? It's taking place entirely within your own head, and you can spend as long as you want on that like bathroom floor with the water bugs, vomiting and convulsing. Right? And what comes next is on you. You have to go out there and change it. You have to go find people who are, because, the responsibilization, right? The diffusion of like individual responsibility beyond like individual accountability, like any possibility of that, it necessitates you to go out and find other people who feel as you do and have gone through this convulsion as you have, and to organize with them. And if for some reason you can't do that, yap about it until somebody who can hears you.
Right.
Yeah, that what you're saying is that it reminds me, like, that is such an important part of this play. Like, one of the main takeaways I had was the section earlier, about like halfway through, where he's talking about like, I believe certain things. Everybody believes certain things. And he's going through like, here's all the different things that my friends believe. My friend believes that poor people don't actually care about politics, and then my other friend believes that art can change individuals, and through them they could change society, and blah blah blah. But then it has this like the section, would it really matter? So he's saying, would it matter if like if friend A, so friend A believes this, would it really matter if friend A, what if it was friend B who believed that? Like, what if and friend A believed the other thing? What if they believe, like, you can say whatever. You're like, oh, I'm a Marxist Leninist Maoist, primarily Maoist, like I'm a syndicalist. You can say I believe X, Y, and Z. Like, I adhere to such and such thing. But it's just like, it goes back to that book about my beliefs, my political beliefs could fill volumes, but like your political beliefs can be interchangeable with a bunch of other people's if they don't actually mean anything, right? If someone can't look at your life, and if those beliefs don't motivate action in your life, then it, like, you could literally believe something else and it doesn't matter. And that's just like a thing that has been very has been motivating to me many times throughout my life. Is just like, okay, well, yeah, I believe such and such thing, but I got to do something, or else like it doesn't matter if I believe such and such thing.
Right. You can be you can be as, okay, you believe this thing, and if you don't act on it, yeah, congratulations, you're as interchangeable as, all the people who you have to believe do not fear death, in order to go on thinking that this is right and proper, or, better than, the worst form of government except for all the others.
And I have to say, the end is basically the speaker saying, I know you forgive me. You have to forgive me. And it says, I'm still falling, because there was this dream he had that he was clinging onto this like helicopter rotor or whatever, and then just falling and falling and falling and falling. And I'm gonna be real, y'all might know. I don't exactly know what it symbolizes. It said it just feels like a dream of not knowing where you are, right, in space and time and place. because I guess it's worth reiterating. This person doesn't have their hands on the lever of power.
Right.
This person doesn't have, this isn't a senator. This isn't a general. This isn't a CEO. This isn't even a, the implication. If I had to guess, this person's job, they're, a consultant at McKinsey or something like that. You know what I mean? Like a very a job that is very yeah, whatever, man. Like, here's your $250,000 a year. Good money, great money. This person is very comfortable. This person will never worry about having to go to the doctor. This person will never worry about their rent or mortgage. And also, they'll never have the power to buy an election. And this person is falling because where are they? Where are they in the system? Who are they? I think of this is cringe to mention, but I think of the Black Mirror episode 15 Million Merits. Have either of y'all seen that?
I know of it.
Yeah, this person who gets a job at the end, spoiler alert for something that's a decade old, gets a job ranting about how bad society is from that society.
Well, have you I mean, it's sort of like Network. Have you seen Network from 1970?
Yeah.
They give him a show doing his rants about
right,
because it's great ratings.
Right, exactly. There has to be, and when I'm saying this is a fucking moron who does not know the answers. There has to be a way beyond the media, a way beyond just the saying the things, the doing the things. And I can look at Wallace Shawn's own life and look at the organizing he's done. Well, Wallace Shawn has been a part of protests that have blocked subway stations in New York City, where every single person wears a shirt that says ceasefire now. This is in 2023. I can look at, his work that's electoral, which is part of a delegation of Jewish anti-Zionists who claim their role is to hold Zoran Mamdani accountable to his promises. Things like that. That's his work he's done. And numerous other things. There are ways we can plug in, but it can't just be media. Wallace has realized that fact because he's doing shit. He, to my knowledge, I think he got arrested in that Capitol protest when Netanyahu showed up. I mean, he's fine because the dude's probably, I don't know what his net worth is, but he's fine. You know what I mean? All of us have to think of ways we can plug in very materially.
Well, I hear if you storm the Capitol, you get a whole bunch of money from the government.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Listeners, I need y'all to do something for me. I've not asked you too much. I need y'all to do something
Jagoffs, rise up.
Right into Donald Trump that I was there. I was the guy that pissed on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Listen, it's not that unbelievable. My posting history, I've insulted her plenty of times. Oh God.
Well, that what I was gonna say was going back to what you were saying. It's the one of the other sections of this play that just is so that just has still sits with me every time is just this litany here of my feeling in my heart a sympathy for the poor does not change the life of the poor. My believing fervently in gradual change does not change the life of the poor. Parents who teach their children good values do not change the life of the poor. Artists who create works of art that inspire sympathy and good values do not change the life of the poor. Citizens inspired by artists and parents to adopt good values and feel sympathy for the poor and vote for sincere politicians who believe fervently in gradual change do not change the life of the poor, because sincere politicians who believe fervently in gradual change do not change the life of the poor.
We have to do more. Whatever you're doing, it's not a moral. It's we got to do more. And if that makes you feel bad, I'm sorry. I feel bad, man. I feel really bad. And also, I don't feel as bad as Ahmed does. Right? I know I don't. I don't feel as bad as someone in Cuba right now. They fucking to date this. They just indicted Raul Castro on something fucking 35 years old, probably as a justification for some bullshit. right? Like at the end of the day, I'm not telling you exactly what you have to do because I don't know. I'm not a genius. Everyone who's listening to this podcast knows this. None of us are, but you got to do something. You got to do something. You've got to do something. All of us do. And if this, I was reading people who were reacting to this play. I was reading. There was a collage of late '90s, like it was like a an archive of chat room shit from like late '90s, early 2000s. People talking about this play, and people talking about ways it influenced their lives, and it was beautiful. It was like I went to the soup kitchen, right? Oh, I did Doctors Without Borders. Oh, there was one guy who said, "I threw a rock through a cop car about Iraq." This was a later one. Beautiful. We got to do more of that. We got to do more of that. We got to do more of that. We have to.
Well, yeah, and what you're saying, yeah, like I also don't know. I also don't know what you listener are supposed to do, but I do know that you can't do anything by yourself. You need to
Yes.
find other people, and you will, yeah, like you feel bad because you're alone and because of all the conditions, but because you're alone, you will feel better when you're working with other people. Find other people who believe in the same world that you do, because they're out there. We have friends everywhere.
Yes. And I've said this before, but I haven't said it in too long. No matter where you are, email in and ask, where are groups in my area? And I personally will do the work of finding a group in your area if you tell me your zip code. Like, I am more than willing to do that. I've done that for probably 20 people at this point. And which is like, please, like, honestly, like, I'm not that I don't believe you can, but like, if you need me to, I will. Like, we will do that. Like, that is more than anything. And if it causes you to have no time to listen to Workers Lit, that's fine. Like, we've got shit to do. There is work to be done. Please keep listening to Workers Lit. Please subscribe to us on Patreon. But the point is, there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of shit. And if I needed a fire lit under my ass, good God, this play do it. And I'm not gonna lie, I read this play and it did something to me. But and I listened to it a couple times. But when I listened to it today, Ethan, I actually listened to the one you read. It just like I just felt it. I don't know what it is. This did something for me. It really did. And I hope everyone will go and listen to it and will go and feel it. And I hope you don't come away from it feeling like guilt, like unless you're a billionaire. I don't want you to feel guilt. I want you to feel fired up. I want you to feel like there is a global class and we have a philosopher who's on our side. We have the greatest, I'll say it, the greatest philosopher to ever live is on our side and trusts in us. And we can link up and we can make some shit happen.
Well, I don't know where I'm going to fit in. I had a rant about my dinner with Andre. No, I'm not sure where.
Well, I mean, if you want to say it, say it.
No.
Well,
that was just like such a nice ending.
Well, speaking of
Good
things that
movie.
we make happen, Ethan, what are you making happen? Tell the audience where they can find you and what you're doing.
Oh, well, I mean, in terms of like stuff to listen to, you can go to it's People's New Republic on Blue Sky. That's the most active thing. It's me and my friend Johnny and my friend Jeremy from Pearl's Pod. We are reading through. I'm this is that is it's pure entertainment. You're not going to get anything. We talk about politics and stuff, but that's just for fun. But we can all use a little bit of fun sometimes. But yeah, definitely People's New Republic. Occasionally I do I write and perform short horror stories that I release on a podcast called The Uncanny. And then I do it's been a while at this point, but I have done some interviews with theater people on a podcast called the Sandcastle Business. I've actually interviewed 2 of the 3 Worst of All Possible Worlds guys for that. Yeah. But I think just follow me on Blue Sky. That's where you'll see the occasional things that I do. That's where those will be posted.
Well, Ethan, I have to push back just slightly on what you said because our episode that we did talking about ambush at Corellia, I had a listener of our pod write in about who says, he is from Montenegro, that said it caused him to re-examine the history of his country. So we were
Well,
mostly
all right.
riffing about Yugoslavia, but we accidentally did something cool. So
Wow. I will tell the fellas. That is
yeah, I
that's
should have
great.
told
That's
you
great to
that.
hear. No, that's great
But
to hear.
glad to tell you on
Oh,
mic. I got an email about that 3 weeks ago. So
that's
you know,
amazing.
um shout out to John, if that's what his email name is. I don't know.
John, that's your
But
real
from
name?
Montenegro, if that's your real name.
Nice.
I will say I went to Montenegro, saw a lot of pro Tito graffiti there. I don't know that that's anecdotal, but just gotta say, saw a lot of like, hey, this shit sucks. It was kind of better like a little bit ago, wasn't it? Anyway, go and listen. Please go and listen to People's New Republic and Ethan's other work. It's
We have
really good.
fun.
It's fun.
Um,
And also, like, look, it's niche, but like the people in that niche are listening to this podcast. You know what I mean? Like pretty much all of them. They're here. I know you're listening to them. Go and subscribe. That's our niche. So Ethan, thank you so much for being on this episode.
Thank you for
yeah. Oh,
suggesting
thank you
this.
for having me. I would recommend going back and watching My Dinner with Andre. Thinking about the fever, it makes it a fucking black comedy. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like it totally like it just like it totally realigns everything that's
I've got
happening
to.
there. Cause like Andre Gregory, he's like describing these incredible metaphysical insights without realizing that like most people can't go to the Sahara on a whim, which Wally does point out in the thing, but the movie just kind of brushes past that. And like on Andre Gregory, he's like talking, he's like, oh, we're seeking human connection, we're so isolated, and the waiter comes up, pours his wine glass, literally does not even acknowledge the waiter is there. So just like I watched it with the director. I just watched it with the director of The Fever while we were in the rehearsal process, because we were just trying to get a sense like the cadence of the language, and we were howling because it was like we were so steeped in thinking about The Fever and like Wallace Shawn's the guys in My Dinner with Andre are the guys in are the protagonists of The Fever, or should be or need to be.
Have you watched the Community parody of My Dinner with Andre?
No.
You know the show Community?
Yeah.
You got to watch that episode. You don't even have to watch the rest of the show. It is such a funny. I wouldn't say you got to go watch the parody of My Dinner with Andre. I don't have anything else to say. The part where he's like, I call into sex call lines and say I'm 300 pounds, even though I'm hot. Is such a good, like it's such a good bit. You got to go check it out. Yeah,
I will.
do yourself
I will.
a favor. Okay, I haven't talked about this much at all because I haven't really known what to say about it, but it felt appropriate given the time we are in. I can say this: we're recording this on May 20th. It seems like, and I might be wrong, that the United States is about to resume its bombing campaign of Iran. It is certainly strangling Iran and is doing a lot of horrible shit all around the world. It is facilitating the bombing of Gaza and Lebanon. It is facilitating the strangulation of Cuba, and it is doing what the United States does. Jesus Christ! I'm gonna try. We have a person who emailed in a few months ago that I had a correspondence with in December, January, and February. And we were talking about the sci-fi you've worked on in Farsi. You're an Iranian. And 1 week into the war, you stop replying to emails. And I don't know, you might be fine. I don't know. You might not. Your power station might have been bombed, right? Like you might be chill, or maybe you got like annoyed talking to me. I don't know. That's fine too, by the way. That's fine. I'm just some guy. But I just have to say that I know I live in the imperial core. All of us do. and that our country wreaks a devastation for the level on the people of the world for a level of comfort that we all enjoy. And that I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to do the best I can to fight for you, man. And I hope everyone listening does as well. Thank y'all. And appreciate y'all. Bye.